off on me. But you can deflect the electrons any way you want. And I think that's why we have the myth of them deflecting light into the chambers through a series of mirrors. See, there's some kind of truth. There's always a bit of truth to everything. It starts somewhere. You just got to find out and dig and unravel the truth, pretty much. Okay, see, if you have an anode and a cathode, or a cathode and an anode here, then you have an anode here, and deflecting plates, you can deflect the electrons on light, or both, however you want. And you can direct it through here. I believe they used both. They used every bit of power they could in every way they could. And through this power, they basically wasted nothing. I mean, they used everything they could and created it all and used it in a circle. And if you do shine this light through here, you will get the light prism here. And that's where that comes into play. I mean, the quartz could be right here. And when this shoots through here, you're shooting the positronium in through the capacitor, or through another plate here. And while you do this, the photons and everything create this prism. So here's a transformer here. Now, if you have a step-up transformer, step up, step up, step up, step up, step up, all the way around, then you're creating large amounts of current. And if you can actually do this several times with smaller circles, eventually you'll have a strong electromagnetic field. Towards the center, you'll be basically focusing your electrons, or however you want to configure it. Now, I don't know their configurations, but nonetheless, the facts remain that this basically created power. I mean, it generated power. All of this, they knew about electricity. But these could be thermoelectric legs at the same time. They're step-up transformers. So you're creating power with several different methods instead of just one method. So here's Teotihuacan. See, thermoelectric generators. Now, there's underground passageways here, but they've found mica. And mica is what we use in our spacecrafts to shield them for re-entry, because they're great for heat reduction. And basically to protect whatever device you're trying to protect from melting. Just like we have heat sinks on our CPUs. Because if you fire up a computer and you don't put a heat sink on your CPU, if there's no voltage, or not a voltage regulator, but if there's no setting in there in the BIOS that prevents it from melting, then the thing will literally turn to liquid. And here's this again. See, the sockets. And if a pyramid is socket 9131, or at least Giza is, and CPU sockets exist, I mean, you can't deny that. It's just too coincidental, too ironic to be untrue. And if everything is such a mystery, if we really wanted to solve it, don't you think we would actually consider this stuff? But it's like everything, it's funny how we believe certain things that there is literally no evidence and no support behind. But we won't believe things that we actually have proof of. Now, what logic and what sense does that literally make? It makes none. And if we actually want to progress, or actually be a better species, or actually gain something that we didn't before, then why don't we start taking things into consideration and start experimenting with this stuff? Because we actually may solve cold fusion. Because, in my opinion, this is cold fusion. I mean, I'm no genius or anything, but I believe this actually is how cold fusion was achieved. See, here's Persepolis again. Now, even our power plants resemble this. I mean, most generally, see, we use mechanical energy. Now, they could have used mechanical energy too. Who knows? You know, we wrap up coils and make machines, but over the thousands of years, maybe they used silver as wiring, like I was saying, and that stuff was pillaged, taken apart, stolen, tore up, melted down, and turned into jewelry, pots and pans and vases and all that stuff. So we don't have any evidence of that. But if we actually put the materials that we have now into strategic areas and points across this thing, we can actually find out how it worked and probably simulate the power ourselves. See, here's another temple. See, these could have been thermoelectric legs, or they could have actually been arcs. An area where it arcs. What, Jada?
I had a thought about that.
The little space. What?
I had a nightmare.
You had a nightmare? It's okay. Hold on. That's almost done. But, damn, that looks similar to a transformer or something right there. But nonetheless, these could have been, this right here, if you were to walk into this when this thing was operating, it probably hummed really, really loud. I mean, it would probably roar. Like the Sphinx, when you turned that plant on, the Sphinx star generator, if you turned it on, it would probably roar very, very loud. See, a lot of the sites are actually built onto other and more ancient sites also, but nonetheless, they're on the 33rd and parallel, but they're all over the planet in certain areas. And when you have an area such as the Pacific Ocean, the landmass, like I was saying, there's a large amount of it that's gone or underwater, and I believe that's exactly where Atlantis was. I'm just going to throw this out there. This first plate right here, how we depict the Ten Commandments, it kind of closely resembles how we depict it, but just throwing that out there, because it's just, I noticed that and it looked kind of ironic. And ironically, they were said to be made of quartz, so that's pretty mind-blowing in my opinion. Now here's an electrical diagram. Ironically, this resembles these odd structures that we've been talking about. And see the ground, that's what we use for a ground.
Daddy.
What, Jada? See, thermoelectric generator. Now, if this was a circle instead, you would have Stonehenge, especially if you have several circles. So here in the atomic structure of gold, the Merkaba, or Metatron's cube, or the Ark of the Covenant. I thought this was cool, so I just thought I'd throw it in there. Found that and thought it's a pretty neat picture. I'm just going to say this. I believe the Big Bang, whenever it occurred, the cosmic microwave background or radiation, the echo, is basically gravitons or gravitational waves, which is static. The echo is static, basically, and that is what's gravity. But there are probably, in my opinion, two types of gravity. There's a gravity that more or less pushes us down, which is our atmosphere kind of pushing us toward the surface of our planet, and our planet's static energy pulling us down, which you'll have basically two forces. Or there's the gravity in space, which is static, which pulls mass towards itself. The ether is basically designed to allow these static forces to interact with one another in a void or in basically space-time. Because you have protons, electrons, and neutrons inside anything with mass. Everything with mass has atoms, which have electrons, which in turn has a current. Now, it's a very, very weak current, but it's a static current nonetheless. And the ether in space allows that very faint static current to interact or help another bit of mass locate, that helps them locate one another. So they pull towards each other. Now, when you have nucleonic matter, such as electron or neutron stars or magnetars, and you have a high gravitational field, you basically have a high static field. And with quasars, now they say that once the black hole starts eating so much, the friction creates the light, and the light moves at almost the speed of light, which it's not real light, but it's friction. Okay, whenever you pull your clothes out of a dryer, and you can sometimes see the static sparks, okay? That's basically what the quasar is doing. All of that friction is that static energy, and that static is heating up and pretty much gaining friction, momentum, power, energy, and it's creating that large arc of light that shoots through the universe. See, this looks like it would do the exact same thing. Say these would pretty much create an energetic field, and this would shoot an ionizing beam. But all of the precious metals and material has been stripped off of it, and basically just the rock is left. It's the Roman Colosseum. Now imagine this thing having a gigantic static field. Now, if this was sealed and there actually wasn't a pathway through here, that would basically signify that this would be probably very low of oxygen. There would probably be hardly any oxygen. Therefore, whenever the subterranean chamber fills it with hydrogen and ionized gases, the pressure would build up. And once you get a spark, you can burn the star in there. You would not need any oxygen to burn, because oxygen is more or less like an oxidizer. It's an accelerator. But having plasma, it doesn't need oxygen. So this could still be sealed. And maybe this did not produce an antimatter energy for this capacitor. Nonetheless, this still was a capacitor. And once this star is ignited, it's going to keep this spark going. And just imagine one being hot and one being a cold, or a hot. Well, a hot, cold, and then a positive and a negative. And having a small amount of uranium or plutonium in it that helps it generate its starting power, basically. It helps it create the internal power that it has to be able to ignite the star, which in turn gives it the charge that it needs to arc to keep the star burning. See, here's some depictions of our circuit electrical diagrams, symbols we use that look ironically like some of the hieroglyphs that we see. Now see, this is a depiction of the Roman Colosseum here. This is the underground basement. Now, it looks to me like these would be capacitor plates. Because if this is actually a corridor of some sort, why would you block it off? And then block it off again, and then block it off again? But these had to have served some purpose, and that's exactly what I believe they were, was capacitor plates. It looks pretty obvious. See? Cell. That right there's a capacitor, for the symbol for it. See? Here's the earth ground. This is basically just a simple radio. Another thermoelectric generator. Looks like what we're seeing in a lot of these hieroglyphs. See, here's an example right here. As a matter of fact. See, here we go again. Onks, representing power, or static energy. See? It's a giant thermoelectric generator. See, these depict the ground. Now, this is Solomon's Temple again, but imagine if we are getting energy from the ground, like, of course, they have the subterranean chamber and they're using the energy from the earth. These would probably be grounds. You would have your thermoelectric legs, and you would have grounds, and you would probably have antenna reaching high in the air, or something to gather atmospheric energy, because you'd be using the equipotential lines. So here we go again.